Katie, welcome to the show.
Justin, I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here as well, of course, with you and having this conversation. And we were just talking before I hit record about how we've seen each other multiple times. We've said hello multiple times, but we've never been able to really sit down and have a conversation because, as you know, as an entrepreneur, events get crazy, and your husband runs Podfest, and he's been on the show. But when your husband's running it and you're helping run it and you're running around, there's zero time. So I'm glad we have this time.
I know, me too. It's really special. Yeah, I feel like we have been orbiting each other, and this is like, oh, okay, we don't have the chaos of the stuff going around. Like, let's sit down and actually like talk and chat. This is nice.
Yeah, it's crazy. We are also connecting at the perfect time because I told you that I need meditation right now, and
Don't we all?
like I just feel like I mentioned earlier, I go through spurts, right? Like I'll do it every single day for a while, and then I'll stop, and then all of a sudden it's been 3 months since I've done it, and you're like, what am I doing? It seems like it's so easy, but it's one of the most difficult things to stop and pause and meditate. And the reason I'm even bringing this up is because you're the voice of meditation for women and mom entrepreneurs and moms in general, which is such a cool thing with millions of downloads and just a really cool process that you're doing. But what got you into meditation?
So I was 18 or 19 years old. I was a sophomore at Arizona State. I was taking a yoga class, and during the last 5 minutes of yoga, we were laying in the, Shavasana position, just basically down on your back, lying down. And the teacher took us through a guided meditation. I didn't know that that's what it was at the time, but that's what it was. And it was 5 minutes, and I woke up and I felt lit up. I was like, what was that? I want more of that. Not because my mind was quiet the whole time, which is what we often think meditation should be, but because just the practice of coming in and breathing and focusing in on the breath rather than, being engulfed in all of the thoughts, just the entire experience just blew my mind. I was like, this is amazing. My body feels good. My head feels clear. Like, this is awesome. So over the course of all these years, I'm 43 now. So over the course of all these years, I've just sought out meditation in some way. Back then, that was 1999, 2000. I didn't have a phone. So like it was going to the library and, checking out meditation CDs or, just searching out some way to have them. And I can still remember the very first time I sat down by myself to try a meditation by myself with no music. I did the thing that I thought I should do, like light candles around the room, bring down the lights, sit in the perfect, cross-legged lotus position. And within 10 seconds, my back was hurting. I was so uncomfortable. My mind was going a zillion miles a minute. And it took all of a minute to get myself up and just I was so pissed. I was so angry, but then I just kept trying. So, eventually I came out here to Florida, and eventually that brought me to going to our local Buddhist center and going and participating in, whatever meditation sessions that they were having for about 2 years. I did that. And then I got introduced to a random friend who was a therapist and was doing guided meditation groups at her house. Sometimes it was 2 of us and sometimes it was 10 of us. And I did that for a couple of years. And so and then eventually I discovered this thing called a podcast. And I think that was the first podcast I ever listened to was Meditation Oasis, one of the OG meditation ladies.
Is it still around?
Yeah. She's not regular, but she might post once a year or a couple times a year, something like that. But she's been around forever. She's got this beautiful voice. And I just remember being like, wow, this is so, the guided meditations, this is so nice. And I can get it on my phone. So yeah, that's it. So all these years, I don't do it perfectly. As you were describing, oh, I need this practice. I'm like, well, my first reaction to that is there's no need to have it be anything. And we as entrepreneurs especially think oh, we need to turn this on. And this is this is how it needs to look like every single day at this time. And it has to have that structure in order to eventually get to be quote unquote successful. Right.
Yeah.
For me to be a successful meditator. And there's just no such thing that exists in this space for that. It is, I tend to use it as a tool, one of the many tools that I have for introspection, for calming, for getting my mind out of a very busy and sometimes very dark place. If my body just feels like really like revved up and I don't want that. And so I just kind of use it when I need it. Like I'll just listen to myself be like, Katie, go slow down. Or I just got done with, 5 calls and oh my God, my mind is in a gazillion places. Go step outside, get my feet in the grass and just take 10 breaths. And that's a meditation. So, or sometimes it's walking in nature, or sometimes it's literally just sitting on my couch because I've been moving around all day and just sitting and taking some deep breaths, or actually listening to a guided meditation. So yeah, my practice now is, as it's always been, very, very imperfect, but it has been a really powerful one to watch the cumulative impact over time of, the more you meditate, it doesn't equal more time your brain is quiet. That doesn't always equal out, but it does equal the more you are able to open this space for potential quiet, for stillness. And the more you open that space, the more opportunities you have to really connect with yourself, your true voice, what it is you really want in this world, what the answers are to some big decisions that are coming up or playing through, or how to navigate this world for yourself. So it has been a very, very powerful tool for me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that too, especially as an entrepreneur who most entrepreneurs tend to be perfectionist, step by step. Okay, this is the first thing, this is the second thing, this is the third thing. On top of that, I'm also a triple Virgo. I'm also my biggest bully. So I beat myself up over everything. And, just that constant reminder of, hey, it's not supposed to be quote unquote perfect. Like it doesn't look a certain way every single time. Just to take that second and step away and go, okay, let me take a couple minutes and breathe through this and do that. I think it's so important, right? And obviously you're an entrepreneur. You're also a mother of 2. And so your life is so insanely hectic, right? Like, where do you find the time as an entrepreneur to balance your businesses, your children, and then of course, like, making sure you're taking care of yourself as well?
Yeah. And my relationship with my husband, feeding, putting energy into, my family, my parents, all that stuff. That is like the ultimate question, right? So I don't love the word balance. I don't think that that's really accurate to what actually exists in this space. I call it the pull, or the equation. And so for me, it's sort of like, I look at I tend to look at my life in weekly blocks. So, for this week, what amount of time and energy do I have to put into my business? And for this week, what time and energy do I have to put into my kids? And for this week, what time and energy do I have to put into my husband and into myself and all those sorts of things? So obviously sort of the bigger, more obvious ones on there are this constant pull I feel between, my work and my kids, and quality time with my kids, and the work that I'm here to do in this world, which is why I'm an entrepreneur. And that one, I don't know if I have a good answer for you on how, but the realities are, it has started in my mind, and I'm going to start with this basic belief system that's called, if you are a parent, more specifically, this has been sort of told to a lot of moms and women. If you're a mom and you have a business or have a career, you can't have both running full gun at the same time. That's just not possible. You can't put the gas pedal on both of them at the same time, because if you're being the kind of mom you want to be, you obviously have to take less time away from or more time away from your business to have more time with your kids. If you are really into your career and your business, then that business obviously needs more time and therefore less time with your kids. And there's a lot of emotional stuff that comes with that, right? So very early on, and I'm not perfect at this, but very early on, I was very clear that was a limiting belief that wasn't going to serve me, because I didn't want to believe, nor do I still want to believe that that's true. I want to believe that I can be the kind of mom I want to be, which means spending a lot of quality time with my kids at this young age. And I can have a business that is massive and huge and really making an impact. And I don't need to put the brakes on that. Now, I say that, and the way that it actually shows up on a daily basis is me having to really be a good manager of my energy. The manager of time, yes, sort of like ends up being a byproduct of that. But what I mean by managing my energy is, on any given day, and I know this enough to sort of like pre-plan this, but on any given day of the week, where's my energy going to be? How much energy am I going to have? What kind of energy am I going to be in the space of, in order to create in order to give what my business needs to my business, and in order to give to my kids what they need from their mom, right? And so it's just managing that. So it comes down to the logistics of managing my schedule a lot, knowing, when I'm picking up my kids from school, knowing I do not do well working with my kids around. So it is the very rare thing that you will see me on my phone when I'm around my kids, or, on email. That really doesn't happen, because then I'm not good with my attention split. So I know I'm not being a good mom or good in business at that particular moment. So I have really hardcore boundaries as far as like, nope, I've been talking to a couple of people about scheduling some time to meet. And ironically, I'm getting a lot of like, hey, can you meet at like 4:30 in the afternoon? I'm like, nope, I turn into mom at, depending on what day, at 2:00 or 1:30 or at 4:00. So like, I'm sorry, I'm just not available unless you want to wait until like 9:30 at night, when you're not going to get the best of me, but I am available there to be businesswoman again. So it's a lot of like having these boundaries in order to fuel the energy for the things, for my values, for the things that are most important to me. And so, not in this equation that's very obvious is like, okay, when am I getting time for myself? When am I making sure to take a breather for myself? When are my husband and I getting time? And we're really conscious about, like we have a date just about every single Saturday. So if not, obviously seeing each other in between each Saturdays, right? Like, and really, I'm talking seeing each other and spending time with each other.
Not in the hall in the house.
Oh, every couple does that, right? But we're very, very aware of that. And so we have this standard, like, okay, every Saturday night, sometimes it's a Friday night, like once a week, we are having long walks with each other. We're walking in nature. We're holding hands. We're talking, about all the things that light us up and whatever that may be. So my very long answer to that question is that I just make sure that what I value and what I want to bring life to gets on my calendar somehow in the most effective way.
Yeah, no, and I love that answer, and it's so true. And it's rare when you sit down with another entrepreneur and they're really strict about like, look, that phone call could change the course of my business, but that's not the most important thing to me, right? Like, my schedule is my schedule and I own it. And I'm very much the same way. Like, when it's time to check out, it's time to check out. Like, oftentimes, unfortunately, podcasters aren't doing it full time, and they'll have a day job, and they'll send me their calendar when they ask me to come on their show. And it's like 6 p.m. And I was like, I can't do that. Like, and I want to, and it's not a disrespect thing, but I have these boundaries as far as like, no, this is what's more important. And I think oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we do lose sight of our values, because we especially if we're part of masterminds and diving in, like, you are so surrounded by other entrepreneurs who are like, go, 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 and that's just no way to live, in my opinion.
Oh man, I'm so glad you brought that up. So, well, I do want to say that of course you can change your rules at any given time that you want to, right? And you have the flexibility to do that. And exactly what you said about this entrepreneurial mindset, that in order to be successful, you have to hustle, you have to be in the grind, you have to like work all the hours and do all this stuff. So before I had the Women's Meditation Network, I had a podcast called Biz Women Rock, and I had had it since 2014. I had it for a total of about 6 years. And that was me back then. I was getting up at 4 a.m. I had it before kids. And then once I had my first daughter, I was getting up at 4 a.m. so I could have a couple of hours to do the work I needed to do before she woke up. And then, I would work throughout the day, and then I'd put her to bed, and then I'd work all night as much as I could. And like, it was a grind. And it was okay. It worked for a while. But when I made this big transition to close down Biz Women Rock and go full in and start the Women's Meditation Network, it was because I got pregnant with my second daughter. And I literally, within a breath, I was just like, I don't want that business anymore. I loved it. I love my clients. I love showing up. I loved that motion at that time. And in a heartbeat, I was like, it's done. I don't want it anymore. So I was very conscious of exactly those things as I was creating and building the Women's Meditation Network 4 years ago. And I knew two things to be true that still guide me through, and actually three things to be true that still guide me through this journey of this company. One was that I knew that it could continue to be the next evolution of the work I really feel called to do here in this world with women. Before it was with women entrepreneurs, and now it's sort of casting a much wider net, knowing I wanted to make an impact, to millions and millions of women across the world. So that was one. The second one was I wanted time freedom. I wanted to build a business that truly gave me time freedom, because the business I had was, your podcast supports coaching and events and, programs and masterminds. And it was wonderful. And could I have made it really be a time freedom business? Sort of. But if I wasn't in the seats, if my butt wasn't in the seat with a client, or my butt wasn't in the seat with a mastermind group, or I was not showing up in order to bring more people into the fold, I didn't have a business. So that's not true time freedom, right? And while I can say I haven't quite yet reached, true time freedom now, I do have a business model that is made for it. I don't, I'm writing and recording on my own time. It's not very often I'm actually meeting with people, which is why I'm in my kitchen right now.
This is your kitchen? I literally thought of this. I'm like, she does meditation. She's got the butterfly back there. It's super calm.
Nice beach picture. No, I'm sitting on my kitchen table right now, in a totally not professional studio with like wires going everywhere and my lamp right in front of me.
That's the beauty of podcasting though, right?
It's the beauty of podcasting. So that was the second thing. And then the third thing was that I wanted to create a business that created financial freedom. And so I'm saying all of these things because in direct comparison to this hustle until you make it, you must suffer, and burn everything out until you make it. I felt like I had already sort of experienced that. And I got that was not the lifestyle that I wanted, especially knowing at that time pregnant, that I was going to have a newborn and a toddler. And I was like, yeah, no, like I'm still, my youngest is 4 years old now. And I still am like, I am not in the headspace to wake up at 4 a.m. right now. Like I have to grasp every last piece of sleep I can possibly get. And I need to figure out how to work elsewhere. So I don't have a traditional way of working, nor a traditional schedule, but it's one that works for me. So yeah, I very consciously wanted to create and have created a business that really bucks that system of I have to stress and be overwhelmed and hustle all hours of the day in order to be successful.
No, it's great too. And you are right. Like somebody had said to me the other day, they were like, it must be so great not to have a boss, right? Because I've been a full-time entrepreneur now for almost 5 years. And they're like, it must be so great not to have a boss. I go, well, it is great, but every single one of my clients is a boss in some way, shape, or form. Like they're the one paying me. So I have many bosses. Now I fire them more than they fire me, which is a good thing. But it's really, it's an interesting thought process. So I love the model that you've created. Now you do other things. You run the female, I forget what it's called, the female podcasting event. What's it? You run that, right?
No, not at all. No, that is 100%.
You.
No. So literally, all quote unquote, all research. I do. I know it's okay. All I do is the Women's Meditation Network, and it has 8 podcasts that are a part of the network. So it's a pretty robust business in and of itself. I absolutely support my husband, Chris, with Podfest and all the podcasting events that he does. And definitely have some leadership roles in his company, but they're more back office type of things. He is 100%, anything podcasting events like that is him. I don't do any of that anymore.
I really thought you did. Does he do the female one too?
So the women's women in podcasting like group that always is sort of a segment at Podfest.
Okay.
And so he brings in different women leaders who are, very happy and excited to be able to lead that and bring all the women podcasters together. So that's him sort of creating that space for it, and then ends up, attracting the leaders within that community to build it.
That's cool. That's really, really cool. So, it's funny. We talk about podcasting often on this show. It's where I started my business. I bought a $60 microphone, and then I had no idea what I was doing. And then all of a sudden, I've been able to create multiple streams of income and live events and all these other things, right? The things that you just talked about, which are crazy. Now, with
they're
that
not
being
crazy.
said,
They're amazing.
Yeah, but it's a lot of work, right? Like I always say, the live events, they're a labor of love. Like it's insane. Like I oftentimes reference your husband, and I go, I don't know how he does it. Like there are so many moving parts. There are so many things to juggle, but the reality of podcasting is this. I think the numbers, and it could be different now, but something like 80% of shows do less than 100 downloads an episode. And I bring this up because your show is now doing 4 million downloads a month. Like, think about that perspective, right? So when you launched these, knowing podcasting more than most because of your husband and being involved for so long, did you think it was going to really take off the way that it did?
Yes. And I was terrified of that. And it's worth giving this comparison. So when I created the idea of the Women's Meditation Network, again, I sort of had the experience of Biz Women Rock, the other podcast, and that was averaging about 5,000 downloads a month, which is still in the top like 1% of all podcasts.
Yeah.
Like it's a solid podcast, and it had made for a very robust business for me. So when I came up with this idea and got clear on the business model for this, I knew that it would take numbers, like really big numbers for, for me to be able to make the impact I wanted to make, and B, to be able to bring in that kind of income I wanted to create. I knew it would take big numbers, and it terrified the piss out of me. I was like, I've never done that before. I have no idea how to do that. Everything that I have done has felt really hard in the space of growing my podcast. And so, but I still moved forward with it. And I really want to hone in on this point. There's a lot of different variables on why, what started as one podcast, that, what was originally Meditation for Women, which was my first show. It's worth noting that within 3 months of that show launching, it hit 5,000 downloads for the month, and which was bypassing my podcast that I had for crazy, X amount of years before. So I was like, okay, I got it. We'll keep going with this. So, from that 1 to now 8 podcasts, over 70 million downloads, an average of 4 million downloads a month. It has been incremental growth, and it has started in my head every single time. Every single time it has to start with me thinking, oh, more is possible. Like, oh, I didn't think I can still remember the month that I got 100,000 downloads. It was, I think it was February or March of 2020, right when the pandemic hit. It was March, because that was a very big turning point for me, because I had one show at the time. My baby now was 1 year old, and I had just, put Biz Women Rock to sleep officially a couple months prior. And I was like, okay, let's go. And then the pandemic hit. And I just remember putting out all these, I was like, I noticed my numbers starting to rise. And I was like, okay, obviously people are searching for ways to feel less stressed right now. Yeah. So I just kept putting out content. I would put out, at that time I did 1 episode a week. And at that point I was like, however many I can pump out, I will. So obviously I did a lot more, and my numbers continued to rise, and I hit 100,000 downloads that month. It blew my mind at the time. I had no idea that was possible. If you would have told me I would have done that a year or 2 before, like I would have been like, no way. And the same holds true for the numbers now. Like, as an entrepreneur, I'm constantly just thinking about, the more I want to keep growing, what's the way? So I have to pull myself into this moment going, oh my God, like I get 4 million downloads a month. How many women is that reaching? That is insane.
It's crazy.
Like, that's a really big number, and not out of a space of hubris by any means, but a space of like deep appreciation for like all of the little decisions I and Chris, who has a very significant role in my business. He is like head of my marketing. So like that we have made this entire time to now be here. And obviously gets me excited about now, okay, now it's time to stretch what's possible for this next season. Right. So it's been really interesting knowing that, like, it just all starts in the mind, and appreciating that and knowing, okay, what more is possible.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I know you talk often about mindset and, making sure you have the right mindset going into things and shifting out of things and doing all the things in between. So talk a little bit about, how do you prepare yourself, right? Like, you're like, I was scared shitless, but I did it anyway. Like, how do you prepare yourself for that type of action?
I feel like I've had a lot of practice ever since, as a little girl. Like, I've had a lot of practice listening into myself and like knowing. I think naturally all of us are very connected to our intuition and what's right for us. unfortunately, the older we get, the more layered, kind of culture comes over us, our own expectations, like all that sort of stuff. And it sort of quiets or dims this voice that's inside of us. And I feel like I've always had a deep connection with that voice and I've always practiced, whether it's through journaling, meditation, all sorts of different ways to sort of like get really clear on myself and what's true for me. What naturally comes out of that, and this is partially why I love meditation as a tool to share, but what naturally comes out of this space of knowing thyself is knowing now what to do. And it is terrifying. It's mostly terrifying. Like, oh shoot, I know I want that, but it's going to take this step or this next step on what to do. So, how do we get better at that? We take action, sometimes in a small way, sometimes in a really big way. And we just trust that our voice is actually telling us the right thing and that everything will be okay. And and so I feel like I've had a lot of practice doing that. And that is a muscle I've flexed a lot my entire life. So I know at this point, like, okay, like I'm very familiar with that fear. I got it. I'm not going to pretend it didn't stop me for a while, but ultimately that voice speaks louder than that fear. And so I have to keep moving because I have a very low tolerance for unhappiness. And I know that if I don't follow that voice, that's unhappiness. That voice is aligned with happiness. So I have to follow it. Like of course I have to follow it. So, what it takes is what that really practically looks like is me showing up to the mic 4 years ago, guiding my first meditation. I had written the script, guiding my first meditation in front of my mic with no one else around. I have no experience in meditation. There's no reason I should be successful doing this. Like I'm not certified in any particular school of meditation. While I have been a student of meditation and a consumer of meditation, practically my whole life, I'm not formally, I don't have the credentials behind me to prove that. I hadn't really I could count on one hand how many guided meditations I had given to others at that point. So much imposter syndrome, so much fear. But in my mind, I just keep thinking like, what's the worst that can happen? I have to follow this voice. I know I do. So what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is a couple months later, or even a year later, I put an enormous amount of time and energy and love into this and it flops and okay, whatever. Like people think I'm crazy because I did this and it proved to be really horrible decision. Okay. But I have always been in the belief system and it's been proven to me over and over again through the process of taking action that I always win. That doesn't mean I'm always successful at what I choose to do. It just means that I always win somehow, because if I take action, now all of a sudden I'm 2 steps forward and I've evolved into a different person that has taken those 2 steps. And now the world looks a little different because I'm 2 steps in a different direction. Right. So now I have different information. I can make different decisions and I can kind of, really sync up onto where I'm supposed to go next and where I'm supposed to go next. So I never lose that way. And I always feel like as long as I'm listening to myself and being brave enough to take those actions, like I'm okay and I will be guided. And it is 1,000 times better than the option of just staying put or doing the script was, whether it was scripted from me, from other people or society at large, or whether it was my script that worked for me before, but isn't working for me now. I'm not going to be happy in living that script. But I already know it. I'm uncomfortable. I'm a snake. I've grown out of my skin. I've got to move on,
Yeah.
So, it's just a lot of repetition, a lot of practice.
Yeah. And, I think it's the understanding of like, there's a greater purpose to it, right? Like whether it was to spend more time with your kids, to create the passive income, to make the impact with all the women that you currently are every single day. Like, yeah, it's uncomfortable to take that step, but if you know what that greater good is, it does make it at least a little bit easier to take that even that small step. So I love that you shared that. So thank you so much. I want to ask you a question that I ask every single person on my show, and it is a 2-part question. So the first part is, what is your definition of success? And the second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Ooh, that's a good question. What's the definition of success? I think for me, it is feeling full. Like, it's not a destination, which by the way, I'm constantly working on. Like, I feel like that's a constant mindset shift that I'm working on. but it's not a destination. It is very much, do I feel full by the things that I'm engaged with in this life right now? Or if I feel depleted, I don't feel successful. If I feel pulled and tugged at, I don't feel successful. If I feel like I'm not doing what feels good, I don't feel successful. So success to me feels like I feel full and saturated with the things that bring me the most joy in this world. So that's what success is to me. What are 3 things I do every day to ensure that that's that? I have some element of quiet time every day. Sometimes it's literally 5 breaths that I can take because I'm doing the running thing, running around doing the business to mom thing and all that stuff. And sometimes it's a lot more. Sometimes it's like, hey, it's Monday and I'm not ready yet and I need to go on a long walk, or it's exercising by myself. I am very, I think I've become more of an introvert. The older I've gotten, I feel like my kids get so much of my extroverted energy. And so I feel very aware that I need time by myself. And so there's some element of time by myself every single day. Quiet, relatively quiet time by myself. So that's one. The second is sort of a combo. I really, it's super basic and boring, but I really make sure to eat well and, move in some capacity. Sometimes, some seasons I'm super athlete and sometimes I'm just walking every day. But I'm vegan. So I'm very aware of food and the energy it gives us. And so that's, those 2 components are really big. And then lastly, I would say that, I am present. I really actively try to be present, with those I love, with my kids, with my husband. It's sort of the same version of me having quiet time with myself, being present with myself, but in relation to others. That being present, genuinely being present with my kids, with my husband, brings me back to the moment of everything's okay. I'm simultaneously the only one like myself who's ever existed in this entire world. And I'm this tiny speck in this massive, massive universe. Right. So it brings me a level of humility and perspective for what is going on in my life. So it makes me feel very grounded.
No, I love that. And it's so funny. I used to think I was an extrovert. It's because I lived alone and I would recharge all the time when I lived alone. And now I live with, my fiance and her 2 kids, and I'm definitely an introvert. I am without a doubt an introvert. Even when I go to Podfest, I will go find time every single day to just sit in my room.
Yes.
It gets to a point where I don't care what I'm missing. I just need a couple minutes. Just let me take a deep breath. And it's just crazy. So it's so true. Maybe it is because I'm getting older. I'm now 38. So that age is ticking up as well. And just don't have as much energy, I guess. I don't know, but I'm glad.
No, I'm not going to buy that. No, I know 70-year-olds who run marathons. I'm not buying that limiting belief.
So I walk 3 miles every morning. So you talk a lot about that type of stuff, just going out, and then I'll usually fit in 4 days a week another form of working out, or lifting or boxing or something like that. And that's just because I know one day I will be that 70-year-old. Okay, I have to make sure that I'm still moving at 70, which is crazy. But now I wrap up every single interview with the same question. But before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? Where do they hear your meditations? What's all the good stuff?
Yeah. So just briefly, whatever podcast player you're listening to right now, just search meditation for women. It actually will automatically come up in the search. Click on it because every single one of my 8 meditations will be there. So just go and subscribe, follow, listen to the meditations. We're actually doing a whole gratitude giveaway right now. And so if you do that and you go and subscribe, you go write an honest review on Apple. Let me know what you loved about the meditations. And then you go share it on Instagram and Facebook, tag Women's Meditation Network, then you will be included in entered into a contest to win one of 10 of our phenomenal swag bags of all these great products and my favorite health and wellness products all throughout the month of November, just for my way of saying thank you so much for being a listener and just my way of being able to share gratitude.
I love it. So guys, make sure you go check that out. Click the subscribe, do whatever, all those steps you just said, do that. and because I know how powerful that is, and it gets the word out more and more. So make sure you guys do that. Now, like I said, Katie, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, that question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Oh gosh, I've had dozens and dozens of those big ones. Um, I would say being a mom, becoming a mom has, we were talking earlier about entrepreneurship being this thing that forces you to grow no matter what. Like if you really want to be in it and you're dedicated to it, you're forced to grow. And I was an entrepreneur before I became a mom. And so I was like, oh, okay, I've already gone inside out and upside down for entrepreneurship and knowing myself better, right? But then I became a mom and it was this just massive different level of having to stretch myself and grow in some way. And there's no such thing called not doing that. So I would say I've had a lot, and being a mom has definitely been this force, this rocket to force me to grow.
I love it. Katie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey with us. And obviously, guys, make sure you go check it out. But this has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Justin, you're awesome. Thank you.